If we shadows have offended, they but this, and all is mended, that you have but slumbered here, while these visions did appear. And this weak and idle theme no more yielding but a dream, gentles do not reprehend. If you pardon, we will mend.
This is Burn Power, coming to you from Tbilisi, Georgia, here to share with you some of my reasons to visit Prague. Now, some of you might be on my Georgian channel right now, and you should realize I'm doing more travel-related things here, so not just Georgia. Others of you might be seeing this on my channel for puppetry and other documentation of my journeys through Europe. In which case, welcome to those from both Georgian Crossroads and beyond, and Gravity from Above. Well, I have been going to Prague since the year 2000. I've been there 6 times. I'll describe that a little bit more. And we're going to get into the reasons why I keep going back. Before we do, I just want to remind you, hit like. Subscribe to the channel, please. If you feel like contributing, you can get, for $25, you can get a rare book, there are only about 50 left, of my 3 puppet plays. Just send $25, include the word book, and it's yours. And finally, I just started a Patreon. There's a link for that down below. I'll mention it a little bit more at the end. I started going to Prague in the year 2000. It was almost an accident. I mean, it wasn't really an accident. I was on a 2-month leave of absence, and I was just starting to think about puppetry. And one of the reasons I started thinking about puppetry is because I ran into the puppet animation films of Jan Schwankmajer and the brothers Quay. But it was Schwankmajer's strange world that he had created. Not all of his films are puppet films, but the ones that are wonderful. Well, I said to myself, what if it isn't just the animation process that's interesting to me, but the puppets themselves? And so I said, on this trip through Europe, maybe I should stop in Prague on the way back. So I did. It was December in the year 2000. I was near the end of my trip. And I remember I stayed in a very cheap accommodation then. Prague wasn't quite the international destination that it is now. It was still a little over 10 years since it had freed itself up from the communist shackles. But it was certainly drawing attention. But what I would notice over the years, of course, is that it would draw so much more. We'll discuss that. But anyway, I remember this experience. Getting out, walking into the square. I knew I should go see the Old Town Square, but I hadn't really read much about Prague except to know that they had, nice architecture and such. I'd heard a couple of friends talk about it. And I got to the Old Town Square, and I looked around me, and I was just like, oh yeah, I'm in Prague. It really had not occurred to me because I was there more to see if I could discover anything about puppetry, which I did. Well, since then, now I was only there about 3 or 4 days. Since then, I've gone back 5 more times, and I've never spent less than 2 weeks there at a time. So, what I'm giving you here is not knowledge for someone first going to Prague. I'm giving you the advanced level. These are the reasons I go. Now, about 4 of these reasons are the reasons anybody would say to go to Prague. And I'd say the other 6 are going to be kind of surprising. And even within the 4 obvious reasons, hey, it's not going to be what you expect. So get ready for that. Now, if you want someone to tell you about what it's like when they first arrive at Prague, there are literally hundreds of these videos out there. Seems like everyone shows up there and then I'm in the old town square. Here's the astrological clock. Oh, we're walking across the bridge. There's the castle. And they're very predictable. And we get the same kinds of videos of people in Tbilisi here, which is one of the reasons I started my channel. It was because I kept seeing, we're walking down the street, we cross the river, we go up across on the tramway gondola things, they call them the ropeway here, and we get up there, we look at the Mother of Georgia statue, then we walk down past the church, and then we go see the steam baths, and then we walk back towards Liberty Square. So this happens wherever you go. There's a certain set of things that people say you should visit. And no, it's sad to say, but Prague has really been affected by all the people telling you to do the same things over and over and over. And I think the Instagram effect is among the worst. You can also say the TikTok effect is among the worst. Those 2 things kind of go together. And that is to say, for instance, you'll go to a place, there's a long line of people, and they're all waiting to get a photo for their Instagram or TikTok or whatever that shows them looking in this endless mirror of books in the library. What was once just a very interesting thing to look at, I've looked at it and never really thought I should line up to see it, now becomes something that people feed on like locusts. If you want really good information about when you first go to Prague, I would highly recommend watching Yannick and Honza's The Honest Guide.
Well, hello there, my name is Yannick, and I'm the honest guide of Prague, Czech Republic, which appears to be the city that you picked for your vacation. And I'm glad that you decided to prepare for your vacation through a YouTube video. And if you're the kind of person that just likes to watch one video where everything is explained, this is the video.
They're trying to get you off that main drag. Now, there are ways to see it, but we'll mention that in a minute. So let's start with, this is in ascending order. These are my 10 reasons why I really like going to Prague. And the first one is the most absolutely cliched reason. And that is, the beer is really great. Now, I'm not just saying that. Everyone who comes to Prague acknowledges that. If you like beer at all, the beer in Prague, it's like some holy spot where the water is perfect and the way they make it is perfect, and especially the Pilsners, but they also have darker beers as well. But go there. It's not the vast array that you find in Belgium. It's not, many Americans get confused when they go there and they go into a little pub, hospida, and they are surprised that there's not a huge selection. It's because there doesn't have to be. That beer is going to be good. It's like going to Ireland. You're going to get a Guinness on tap in Ireland. You don't really need to worry about any other beer. And that's the same in Prague. There are several different kinds of Pilsners. Sample them. It's not the bottled experience. It's the on-tap experience. And that's something that's very hard to transfer out of the country. So, there you are, the most cliched reason I have and most people have for visiting Prague. So, there you are. Next. This is one of the least cliched reasons for visiting Prague. And a person who comes there for an extended weekend, I hate this kind of travel. Why do people go to someplace for a couple of days? It just makes no sense to me. Well, we saw the museum and we saw this church and then we saw this famous thing you're supposed to see in the castle, or, it happens all over the place. And this is the kind of tourism that is causing over-tourism. is the kind of thing, I mean, the worst is cruise ships. They get off and they spend an afternoon there. I know, I worked with cruise ship tourists. Nice people, but they don't realize what they're doing to the place they're visiting. They're creating these massive blocks of people. In Prague, so many Europeans come there at all times of year for an extended weekend. It's a nice place to get away. But I don't know. This kind of travel, maybe that works for you, but the problem is, does it work for the place you're visiting? Well, if it does, you're never going to find this next thing that I go to Prague for. And that is the humor. More specifically, the black humor. The Czechs, the Praguers, the Czechs have a way of being humorous. They can be absolutely stone-faced, tell you the funniest thing you've ever heard, and just have a wry little smile at the end of it. It's amazing. And when I say black humor, I actually took a French friend of mine who is a puppeteer, as am I, and I've been researching puppetry, to a children's theater festival. And so we were watching children's theater, and the people in the audience were all ages of children, young through high, all the way from the beginning to high school. And there was a combination live performer and puppet show. There was kind of a warning message about alcoholism, because that is a problem in the Czech Republic. So it was kind of a PSA about alcoholism. Well, without going into the whole story, which I've discussed at other places, it ends up where there's this guy, the actual man, on a table. There's a little demon creature. There's these other devils who are played by life-size actors, and they're pulling out his guts. Now, they're not really guts. They're little pieces of red cloth. But nevertheless, I looked at my friend who was from France. She's just like, never seen a puppet show like this. And I said, yeah, in America, this wouldn't even be for, you wouldn't do this for adults, because most adults think puppets are for children, which is a silly idea. But, black humor. It was funny, too. It was really funny, especially the beginning, which just repeats itself 3 times before the play actually starts. But that's the Czechs. And so if you watch someone like Jan Švankmayer's films, or you watch Miloš Forman, his movies, or any other Czech content you come into, there's always this humor in it. And the Czechs always it's almost like this secretive thing they do. But once you begin to understand the culture, you start to see it everywhere. And I remember I did an interview with a couple of lovely younger Czech women who did puppet shows and such. And I said, yeah, there's something about the humor. And they both started laughing. Because they understood. It's a serious part of their culture. In a way, having visited many different cultures, children's entertainment through puppets, you realize every culture is giving their children something different. And what the Czechs are doing is giving them an outlook on life that will prepare them for the darkness and to be able to have a sense of humor about it. So, did I mention this isn't for the first-time traveler to Prague or the Czech Republic? Next. Now, this is more normal. Walking. Walking through Prague. Now, here's the thing. If you're, I hate to say dumb enough, but really, if you show up in the height of the summer hoping to have a nice walk through Prague, especially if you stay on the main trail from the Old Town Square across the Charles Bridge up to the castle, you're going to be severely disappointed, because it will be so filled with people. And now, if you get up early in the morning, by early I don't mean like 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock. I mean get up at 7, and even then there'll be people there. You can find those magical moments in the heart of Prague. However, even in what we would call the shoulder season, the autumn, and especially around Christmas time. Last time I was there around Christmas time, it was just so crowded. And they have a Christmas market in the middle of the Old Town Square. And the first time I saw it, when I first visited, it was great. But the next time I showed up there in December, which was several years later, about 12 years later, it was not so great. It was, you couldn't move, there were too many people there, they were catering to the tourists. So there are other Christmas markets, if you do find yourself there in December, in other areas. Avoid the one downtown, and basically avoid Prague in December. And, it's just not the best place to be, because there are too many people who are going there, and this is my thing, who have no idea where they are. They're in one of the most beautiful, amazing cities in the world, and they're treating it like it's a ticket to get into Disney World. And really, unfortunately, you can't do anything about it, but if you're watching this, you can't be one of those people. You are being informed about what's really in Prague, at least from my perspective. So, walking. Well, for one thing, if it is crowded, and even if you go there, last time I was there in early February in 2022. There were still times of day when it was very crowded on the bridge. I did get some absolutely amazing photos at that time of year, early Sunday morning, about 8 o'clock, walking across the bridge to go up to the castle. That's when I chose to do that. I didn't go into the castle. I've only been into the castle once, and ever since then I just see those lines of people, and I'm like, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I didn't see in there, but you guys are all in my way, and I'd much rather think about things that I see. So, there are so many other places to walk to, though. Fortunately, most people, it's like they're a horse with blinders on them, and they just stay on this one track. It's never ceases to amaze me how people are like sheep when they go travel. I just say, look, if you go 2 blocks that way or 3 blocks that way, your experience will be so much better. But no, people walk down this one gauntlet, and what they see instead of seeing Prague is they see all this commercialized stuff, like, a store selling variations on M&Ms. How does that relate? Endless Bohemian crystal places, which makes me wonder, is it actually being made in Prague, or is it being made somewhere else and being shipped in? I don't know what's going on there. And don't get me started on the Turdalnik stands. We'll discuss them in a moment. One of the places I love to go is the Strahov Monastery. Not only these 2 rooms that are the most fantastic libraries you'll ever see, but it's also houses a Wunderkammer, a magical place where people used to collect things, and all these strange objects, dried animals, just weird little books made out of wood. Not books about the wood, but books made out of wood. And when you open them up, you see parts of the tree inside. Just fascinating stuff. That's what I love about Prague, is all the really eccentric stuff. So, you can also go see museums. Most people say, well, there's the big National Museum, and that gets kind of crowded. But there's so many other museums. And museums that have art. And I highly recommend them. There's a really great museum for various crafts and arts. There's a great museum dedicated to the artist Alphonse Mucha. In fact, there are 2. There's the one that has a lot of his Art Nouveau illustrations. And then there's another one that just features his Slav epic, which is these huge, huge paintings, which you really must see. And that's not right in the center of Prague, and not that many people find that when they go visit, and they should. It's a fascinating, amazing exhibit. So if I wander from the Old Town Square to the National Gallery, there's just so many interesting places to wander through. But the other thing I love to look for is bookstores. Prague is actually a great place for books. Now, of course, a lot of them are in Czech, and I am sure if you're like most people, you don't know much Czech. Do you know any? Ahoy, prosím. There are little words you need to know. I find all sorts of interesting things in their bookstores. They have a great used bookstore. You just keep your eyes open. there are really fascinating books, and sometimes they're in both English and Czech. Other times they are in English. But then there's art books that are so well presented, and I highly recommend them. Taking walks. Just do it. There are still places I haven't been to. I see people talking about them, and I say to myself, I've never been there, and I need to go there. But how am I occupying myself for 2 or 3 weeks at a stretch when I'm there? Well, it's because I'm not looking at these 3 central things that everyone has to look at. Plus, I've been to the Czech Republic enough to know, I don't call it Czechia, I just can't. It just doesn't sound right. And a lot of Czechs feel the same way. So to me, Czech Republic just sounds like what it is, a much more eccentric place. The next thing is something that I think some people know about. Walter's World goes on and on and on about this, Mark Walters. It's something I've learned to really love, and that's Czech food. The first thing you need to know about it are the bread dumplings.
My personal favorite is duck and dumplings. That's one thing I recommend over everything else because they do such a great job with the duck and the dumplings. In the Czech Republic, they love dumplings, whether it's potato dumplings or bread dumplings. You're going to want to eat it, and you're going to want to eat a lot of it. And yes, you will get full real fast, but it is well worth it.
Why is this the first thing? Because it accompanies most meals. They're knedlíky, and they are just wonderful. And they're so hard to make if you're not there. They're made in this kind of way. It's like a loaf of bread that has no crust, that's kind of wet and steamy, and you cut it up in pieces and you serve it with. Most Czech meals will have some kind of goop with it. We'll call it gravy, sauce, something. And that's what they're there for. Is they're there to soak it up, because the real meal for me is the dumplings with the gravy or with the sauce. So the next thing on the list is their goulash, and they have a beef goulash. Now, if you're thinking Hungarian terms of a spicier paprika-filled meal, this is not it. The Czech goulash is a very different kind of beast. Czechs, you have to remember, like the Germans, like the Poles, are really bread and potato people. Meat and potato people. They like basically standard foods. But the interesting thing is they do it in such a way is they give it all a very different kind of a twist. And it's the kind of twist then there's svíčková, which is another meal. And again, you get the dumplings, you get a new sauce, you can get it in variations of meat. Roast duck with red cabbage. Absolutely amazing stuff. And their red cabbage is really well cooked, but it's kind of sweet, which is really unusual. And the duck is just perfection. Just a word here to add to all of the things that have been said about the beast, turdelnik, which is sometimes spelled turdlo, and it is kind of a turd. But kolache is the real thing.
We're the honest guys from Prague. We were always trash-talking this tourist sweet that is everywhere, claiming to be traditional. Well, today we're going to sample it, find out how it tastes, where they sell it, how much it costs, and is it worth the buck? No. This pastry is like a synonym to our country or to the city of Prague. You can find it everywhere on Instagrams, influencers promote it. It's on every corner, every street. You cannot miss it in the touristy center. We bought this one just over there in that street. It was 70 crowns, which is just shy under 3 euros. No filling inside. That's why it's round shaped. They have ones that are cone shaped, where they put ice cream and Nutella and strawberry and whipped cream on the top, so it looks fancy on the gram. Now this one smelled really good as they were preparing it. It looks amazing when they prepare. There's these old women and they kind of wrap it around this wooden stick, put it over the fire. It smells good, but once they take it off and sold it to us, it's like smellless. But we're not here for the smells or for the looks, we're here for the taste. So let's try it. Tastes better than it smells, but considering the fact that it has no smell, I don't know, can you multiply by 0?
I think people are just fascinated by watching this thing spinning around, and it's a bready looking thing, and it has little flecks of sugar on it. And now I remember when I first saw it, when I first got to Prague in 2000, it was just this bready thing. And I remember buying one and saying to myself, okay, it's okay. It's not particularly memorable. But now they load them up with ice cream or various fruits and all of this other stuff, puts syrups on it. And what you see is people will scoop this stuff out and then take a few bites of the turdelnik and throw it away.
Not only we're interested in the ice cream, in this case the white mass, we're also interested in this stuff, the turdelnik, so let's try that. Pretty solid. Whoa. So the reason we got a turdelnik with an ice cream was to add some flavor to it. Little did we know, the ice cream has no flavor, it's just a mass, so we didn't really help ourselves, and the taste of the turdelnik is basically tasteless times 2. Dude, I'm not kidding. I guess after this, you understand why most of the trash cans in the city center are full of this. And this. Oh, was this too much for you? Wait till the end.
Look at the sign.
I see the sign. I don't want any more turdelniks, man.
Don't buy it. Don't get it. It's not Czech. It comes from somewhere closer to Hungary. But the point is this, it's just sold as a tourist trap thing. Just don't do it. Kolache is much more interesting. They're little buns that have different kinds of fillings in them. And it's a real Czech thing, and it's tasty and cheaper. It's not sold in the same kind of touristy way. What? Another thing is avoid the old Prague ham. It's usually sold, they'll say, so much per kilogram, and they'll sell you a kilogram, which is like 2 pounds if you're an American, of it, which is way too much, but then they're going to charge you a lot more, because whatever the price is, they'll put the 100 gram price, which is just, and then they'll sell you 500 grams or something. It's another of these tourist trap things. Okay, now we're back to the obscure stuff. This is why I visit Prague. And this is one of the main reasons. You heard me mention Jan Schrankmeyer at the beginning. Well, I go because of Czech Animation. So I actually found Jan Schrankmeyer and interviewed him back in 2012.
Nedokážu si, a ani jak říkám, mě ta otázka nezajímá, jestli má Loutka budoucnost nebo nemá budoucnost. Prostě pro mě je to prostě něco, co mě stále vzrušuje, co má pro mě svoji magii a co prostě mě stále vzrušuje a inspiruje.
Then there is Jiří Barta's work. Karel Zeman, who does a very strange mixture of animation with live actors and strangely homemade backdrops. Just amazing work. And there's a museum dedicated to him right near the bridge, and I highly recommend it. Then there's Jiří Trinka, who's also very important, and I've seen books for sale on his illustrations and work there. Hermina Terlova is actually, she's one of the earliest ones, along with Trinka. Many of these people, you can find their DVDs there for sale, which I highly recommend because they're almost impossible to find anywhere else. And Czech film in general has so many interesting aspects to it, whether it's Valerie and her Week of Wonders, or Katica, which is a story about kind of 5 folk fairy tale stories together. Or the early works of Milos Forman, or, I mean, I could just go on and on and on. So, and when you go there, then you can find a book about these things. And I would highly recommend that. Now, this is, for me, this isn't a list of things you should do. This is what I do when I go there. And again, I'm operating on a different level than the first-time tourist. I'm not there to go, oh my goodness, it says we should do this. I'm there to avoid that and to really get interested in Prague and the Czechs. One of the things I've come to realize over the years is just how fascinating all the statues are in Prague. Maybe there's one or two that aren't, but there's so many. I mean, there's hundreds of statues and little things popping out of the sides of buildings, little relief forms and whole humans coming out of the sides of buildings. Absolutely amazing stuff. And here's the thing. Now, I just recently went to Florence. You can see my other videos for that here on Georgian Crossroads and beyond. And I love the statues in Florence. Florence has, of course, Michelangelo's David, and it has other Michelangelo statues. But they also have so many other really classic statues there. And there's a whole museum for it. But if you were to ask me which city has the most interesting statues in the world, Prague, hands down. And what's funny is most people don't realize this. Most people are just kind of walking around and they don't notice the bronze of someone who's blindfolded and playing a stringed instrument outside. Maybe they've heard of the upside-down horse with the knight on it riding his belly hanging from a ceiling, but can you find it? This is what you should go to Prague for. And then the next thing is a more subtle thing. It's the Czechs themselves. And the reason I say it's more subtle, for instance, if I was to tell you about coming to Georgia, I would put the Georgians near the top of the list because the Georgians are very outgoing. The Czechs are a little more reserved. They're a little more, like I said, the thing about the black humor, you don't find that out right away. The Czechs themselves, they're friendly. When you meet them, they're friendly. If you can get past all the workers and such who are from Romania or Vietnam or someplace. But if you actually meet the Czechs, they're very interesting. But they're not going to go out of their way to meet you. They're not going to say, oh yeah, I want to be your Facebook friend. And then you contact them and spend a lot of time talking. It just doesn't work that way. I often think the Czech language sounds like people who have for hundreds of years been kind of whispering to each other. And it just has perfect tones for whispering. Because whether it was the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Nazis, the communists, or maybe all the tourists today, they're always kind of talking to each other in low tones, and they're often making little glances with their face that indicate how much fun they think the whole thing is. So, in a dark sort of way. Since I've been going there since 2000, and for very specific purposes, I have made a small collection of friends. I consider myself lucky to have a small group of people that I know and can visit when I'm there. And again, these aren't people who I write to all the time. It's just I see them when I'm there, and then maybe I'll eat with them, maybe I'll go talk to them, or I'll see a show that they put on or something like that. And I always feel when I first get there, it's kind of like I'm wandering around by myself. Eventually I start to meet them, and slowly I go from feeling like a real outsider. And this is, like I say, this is going there 2 weeks or 3 weeks a pop for 5 times after the first time. And I feel so fortunate to have a handful of people that I visit and can see. And by the end, I just find them such interesting people. And there's something to be said about people who aren't super outgoing, but yet at the same time, they're very intelligent. They've got a really wicked sense of humor. There's a great book, I can't remember who put it out, maybe I'll find it and put an image here, of just all the weird little Czech things. So if I would meet a Czech person, this won't mean anything to you, but if I just mention the name Karel Gott, they will all start smiling and laughing. It's just, and you won't understand that, but they will understand that. That's a secret little thing for you there. So the Czechs themselves are one of the main reasons for why. So the next reason.
Řeka je neměnná, jen voda plyne v ní.
Czech music. Now, this is another really obscure thing. The statues are there. Most people don't really notice that many of them, although they're surrounded by them. They just don't see how strange they are. But Czech music is really, really, really good.
Raz, dva, tři. Aha. Hoja, žena moja, hoja, duša moja, prepila mi volky, spozy mi pakolky, duša moja, prepila mi volky, spozy mi pakolky, duša moja, hoja, žena moja, hoja, duša moja, budu já ze šenku, po tvoju sukenku, duša moja, budu já ze šenku, po tvoju sukenku, duša moja, hej! Da 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 da. Hey!
And it's in many forms. My favorite forms are kind of a neo-traditional folk punk style. Bands like Trabant and singers like Raduza. They also do rock music. I mean, some of the people I really like, I just mentioned Raduza, Trabant.
Jeden, ještě jeden, druhý jako jeden. Svedem, co svedem, a veselý život vedem. Rata, 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 ratata, jen ať táhne, kdo má plný kaťata. Ratatata, sekera je zaťatá, zubatá nás nechytí je paťatá. Zvěře od svatýho vítá, mýho benke dolče vítá. Slunce rozpaluje kámen, dnes všecko, zítra amen. Joho!
Každé jaro z velké dály vlaštovky k nám přilétaly, někdy až dovnitř do stavení. Pod střechou se uhnízdili a lidé, kteří uvnitř žili, rozuměli jejich švitoření.
The Plastic People of the Universe were a great kind of underground band influenced by people like Frank Zappa from the communist era. They did these underground concerts. I actually got an album by them back in the 80s when they were still underground.
All the stupid words are in the song. All we need to listen on the ground.
But then you have people like Marta Kubishova, who was more of a pop singer during the communist era, but nevertheless still quite interesting.
Zář záronské růže je v ní žárdenice odpolední, na rtech jejich réva sladká, nardem voní kůže hladká, jmenuje se Magdaléna, není svatá, je jen žena, haleluja. Jak studnice.
Then you have Jana Zebrobra. Try it again. Then you have Jana Zebrobra. Then you have Jana Zebrova. Let's see. Okay, there you have it. That's a tough one. Who is really obscure even by Czech terms. Yet I love her music, accordion playing, as is Raduza.
Všecko nic, pamatovat, přeskakovat, nepodstatný, přásně, vzpomínky svý, explokázat si, zarudlý dásně, každý den v kalendáři se rovná strovosti a stejnosti. A bez vysvíto a rozděl, a libosti a nutnosti.
You have Korea Bohemica, you have Jaroslav Kriček, and I really love Baroque Czech dance music. Now, here's the thing. When I go to the Czech Republic, it's the only place I can find this music. Nobody outside of the Czech Republic seems to know much about Czech music at all. And I say this as someone who has spent a lot of time with music. And I have a very, very large music collection. I have, records and discs, probably over 13,000. So I know my music, and I also know nobody I've ever met, and I've met so many people talk about music, no one ever talks about Czech music. It's just something, it's in the country, and that's it. And I love to go through record stores. Unfortunately, they've been diminishing over the years because of all the nonsense going on with streaming. If you're streaming, you should seriously consider stopping and going back to buying CDs, particularly when you find someone who's an artist today. But there are still stores I can find. Last time I went there in 2022, I found about 3 or 4 Trabant albums, and I was just so happy. Just such great music. And Ujeme Doma, and I could just go on and on and on. There's just so much great music that nobody in the world seems to know about but the Czechs. And if I'm telling you this, it's probably the first time you've ever heard it in your life if you're not Czech. And if you are Czech, you've probably got a really wry smile on your face right now saying, oh, okay, maybe you know something. So yeah, Czech music, absolutely amazing. Every time I go there, I have to pick up more. And there's no way to find out about it except being in the Czech Republic. And just going online and typing Czech music, you'll get lost. You'll find Americans doing Czech disco music or something from the 70s, which isn't bad. But, okay, so finally, number 2. Have I been keeping count? There's only 10. Number 2. Architecture. Now, this is in the obvious category, obviously. Architecture, Prague is one of the most beautiful cities in the world for architecture. I'm of the opinion it might be the most beautiful city. They've done something that very few cities seem to know how to replicate. I mean, Paris has great architecture as well. And one of the things about Paris, they built I think it was the Montparnasse Tour de Montparnasse, the Montparnasse Tower, and it was too big, and everyone looked at that and said, is this what we're going to fill Paris with? And they made a law that within the main periphery of Paris, there would be no more of that kind of architecture. So they built a whole area for it called La Défense, and that's where it all went, which is fine with me. It's a crazy place to go, but that's their financial district with crazy buildings. Poor Tbilisi here, we have been under siege by bad architecture. There's a few modern things here that I really like, but most of it, it's as I think it was, who was it? Peter Naismith said that more harm has been done in the post-Soviet world than all the Khrushchevkas and bad apartment buildings during the Soviet era. And I tend to agree. People just are building boxes. Or they're building fancy but actually cheaply constructed postmodern buildings. I live next to one with a big twist and stuff. But Prague figured it out. They realized that no one is coming to visit a major city to see their postmodern or modern architecture. There are a few exceptions to this rule, but very few. Most of them want to see the older buildings, because the older buildings still have a great deal of meaning. Whereas newly constructed boxes, particularly just the ones made by general contractors and, architects who are not artistically creative, they're just replicating these boxes everywhere. There's a bunch of floor plans and they just follow after it. But Prague figured out that you have to preserve your architecture. The communist government did put up some boxy buildings. They're not right in the center of town, obviously. But when they put up Frank Gehry's dancing building, which is something people come to see, it somehow fits where it is, because unlike so much modern architecture, it actually has curves. And most of the buildings in Prague have some kind of ornamentation. So whether it's the medieval period, or the Baroque period, or the Art Nouveau period, which is absolutely amazing for buildings, or plus there are other things. All of these things have this high degree of ornamentation, and it is the ornamentation and the effect that creates, along with the statues, that makes Prague what it is. And the city government the country was smart enough to recognize that and not pollute the center with all these new blocky buildings. Now, there are some, like I say, but they're not right in the center. So, for me, wandering anywhere in Prague, it's amazing what you see in terms of architecture. If you're an architect, you know Prague is just one of the greatest cities in the world. If you're not an architect and you want to know a good reason, do a bit of homework on different architectural styles so you can differentiate between something built in the Middle Ages or in the Baroque era or in the Art Nouveau period, and you will be richly, richly rewarded. Okay, and now the number one reason, which I guarantee you is not one of the number one reasons that'll be on your list. And in fact, I have never seen, I've watched Walter's World, which is an American guy. He loves to go to Prague. I watched so many of the Honest Guide videos. I watched the Real Prague Guides videos. I like some of their stuff quite a bit. I think Valerie is very funny. I think that, and there are so many others. I've never, ever, ever seen any of them mention my number one reason for going to Prague. I think they don't quite get it. And the number one reason I go to Prague is for, and I've said this already, but now I'm getting to the point where I'm going to tell you why. It's for the puppets, the puppet shows. Things related to puppetry. The Czech Animation relates to puppetry. So when you go to the Karel Zeman Museum, there's going to be some puppets there. At the Music Museum, which I'll bet very few of you even know where it is, they once had an exhibit of mechanical musical instruments, which was mostly puppets. The Czech Republic has a unique relationship with puppets. It has a relationship that I think very few other countries even come close to. And one of the reasons for this is that puppets in the Czech Republic are heroic. And what I mean by this is that they have taken their place in history. When the Austrians came in and took over the country completely after the Battle of White Mountain in 1620, Czechs are always like, how do you know that? I says, because I know about puppetry. The Czech language was eliminated from all of the major public spheres. So education, church attendance, government, everything. All you heard was German, and Austrian German at that. But here's the interesting thing. One of the ways, it wasn't the only way, but one of the ways in which the Czech language was kept alive was through puppet troupes. Theaters had to be in German, but no one cared about the puppets. So puppets would travel around villages doing things like Shakespeare plays in Czech. Later, when there were more nationalist stirrings, the creature kind of related to the Punch family, Pulcinella family, his name is Kašparek, he would often say things to the Czechs that the Austrian overlords had no idea were being said. He was able to criticize the government, and because, who speaks Czech, they could get away with. And eventually the language came back. Well, at the beginning of the 20th century, for instance, most of the children would receive little puppet theaters to play with. Then, during World War II, the Nazis took over. And again, one of the ways the Czechs discussed what was going on was through puppetry. And again, who speaks Czech? So they didn't know what was happening. Eventually, there were some people who snitched on the puppeteers, and the Germans realized they had a big problem on their hands, and so they started arresting puppeteers. And Jan Malik, in his little book on Czech puppetry, said that more than 100 puppeteers were either tortured or killed. And here's the really fascinating thing. The main puppeteer from that time, the most famous puppeteer, was Josef Skupa, and he was arrested and put into Dresden in prison, which is ironic because when the bombs fell on Dresden, while the whole city was wiped out for the most part, his prison was opened up and he left and fled and went back to the Czech Republic near the end of the war. But here's the really fascinating thing. Not only did the Gestapo arrest him, they arrested his two main puppets, Spivo and Hervinek, father and son. Wow. And then the communist era comes, and places like Drac Theater and such would do some very subtle stuff, very allegorical stuff. So much to the point that Josef Krofta, who ran the theater during the 70s, would say people would come and start seeing allegories and things like Romeo and Juliet. When he said, we didn't put any allegory in there. It was just, something. But also the puppet film. Trinka's great The Hand, a short puppet film about an artist being forced to make things over and over for the glory of the country. And he used this symbol of the hand pointing up. Then Jan Schwankmeyer did some things that caused the government to look at him and say, what are you talking about? This isn't really permitted. And this was during the time of the Prague Spring, and then the Russians came in with their tanks and crushed the country and said, nope, you're not doing this stuff here. We're not having communism with a human face, which was, I guess, the slogan that the rebels had. They weren't that big of rebels, really. But nevertheless, it was too much for the Russians. And then the Czechs, the Czech communists, looked at what Schwankmeyer was doing. They just didn't get it. They knew he was talking about something. It was all allegorical. And so they shut him down for about 6 or 7 years. When I got there, I went with the Drac Theater traveling on the Czech roads, which was some of the most scary driving I've ever been in my life. But the theater troupe was doing a play which involved live actors and puppets that was about, is the Czech society now selling its soul for money after all the other ways in which we've been captured? That's what puppets are in the Czech Republic. They have been an underground voice. And so the things I go to look for is, well, I know the people who run Loutky, which is the oldest puppetry magazine in the world, well over 100 years old. There is the National Theater, where they've been doing a Don Giovanni Mozart, but kind of a shortened version of it with puppets. That's a great way to start for people who are just visiting. There are other theaters there that have puppetry. You have to kind of do a bit of research. And if anyone's interested, get in touch with me, and I will let you know what to look for in a more complete way. I'm thinking of doing a kind of puppetry map of Europe, of the places I know where you should go. Now, it would certainly be incomplete, but it might be helpful as a way to begin understanding puppetry. But the point is this: puppetry in the Czech Republic, while there is puppetry done for children, is not just for children. And one of my favorite people to catch up with, and I don't know how much longer they're going to do this, these guys are getting older, but it's the group Buchty a Loutky. I'll put the name here. And they play at the Švandovo Divadlo, the Švandovo Theater. And they do shows for both adults and children. I find both their shows for adults and children fascinating. They so inspired me that when I first saw them, I said, I think we can do this in Alaska. And so I went back and started the Lilliputian Puppet Sideshow. They weren't my only inspiration, but I would say they were the thing that said, we can do this. If these guys can do this, we can do this. And there's so much else there. So that's my number one reason. And along with that, I've discovered a thrift store called Bric-a-Brac, which has 2 locations, and it's right next to the teen church, both locations. And they sell old Czech marionettes. There was one I really wanted. It was about $1,000, but I did pick up this one. Focus. Now, they sold her to me without the clothes. I did find a doll here that had some clothes. But that is an articulated marionette. So what I'm saying is this. My number one reason for going to the Czech Republic was in the beginning and remains for the puppetry. To me, it is the center of puppetry in Europe. There are other centers, but for me, this is the one I always have to go back to. So, this is obscure, yeah. But the whole point is this. By studying puppetry, or you could do this by studying architecture or music, you will get in touch with the Czechs this way. You won't get in touch with them so much if you're on the tourist trail. If you're just there to clog up the weekend, and frankly, you're giving a lot of money to people who aren't Czechs that way, then this advice isn't good for you. But if you want to get inside the Czech culture, what I'm suggesting here is, now there are many other ways to do it. The Czech Republic is really well known for instance, engineering and industrial things. And there's a huge museum for that, which is near the other Alphonse Mucha Museum, the Slav epic, in that area. There's a huge museum. It's incredible. And there are other things. That's how you get in touch with a culture. Not by doing the same 3 obvious things everyone else is doing. So, my thanks to the Honest Guides and all the other people I have watched who have told me about Prague, who've been there more than a couple of times or lived there. There are several other YouTube channels I could mention. Some aren't active right now. But the point is this. Don't just be one of those people who goes there and says, oh, we're eating one of these trudelniks. Oh, we're crossing the bridge and it's just totally crowded with people. And act like you found Prague. You haven't. I mean, this was never more brought home to me when some friends of mine, kind of a spin-off of Loutky, a group called Handa Gote, were doing a version of Faust. And they were doing it in the style of 150 years ago, with the only thing that was new about it was the electric lights. But everything else, for instance, the explosions of the devil and stuff, were all done with resins. The wind sounds were done by spinning a machine. It's just the curtains, the puppets were all old-fashioned, even if they weren't old. An incredible experience. And I look out the window, and I look down at night, and directly below me is the main artery, the Royal Way that goes, and I'm right near the bridge. And I'm seeing all these people just kind of aimlessly going across. And I'm saying, like, I wish they could see the Prague I see.
nejradovějšího, největší čas byl, pokání jsem oštětil. On si myslel, že jsem si mu nějaké krásné ženské stvoření obstaral. Nejhoršího ďábla jsem mu přistrojil. Ty pekelná potvoro, tak to si mi pěkně svůj majstrštům prokázal. Když já myslel, že si mi ono ženské stvoření obstaral, tak ty jsi mi zatím nejhoršího ďábla přistrojil. Počkej.
It's a much more alive and beautiful place. We're just in a time when too many people all go to the same place. And tourism has never been easier. I'm not sure if this is going to last, given the politics of the world today. But I would say, while you can travel, go to places where you can see something that feeds you, that gives you something that you don't normally get. And for me, Prague is always that. Even though it's crazy with tourists, yeah, I do my obligatory time. I'll watch the astrological clock once. I will... last time I went there, I climbed to the top of the tower, which I did not pay extra for the elevator, so I walked all the way up this long, kind of vertigo-inducing set of stairs. And then got out and got a wonderful view. And I paid money for that. And I also knew to get there first thing in the morning so I didn't have to pay as much. Get there first thing in the morning so the view wasn't all people. It was also February. Keep that in mind. I don't care about that. I don't, I feel sad for the people who are kind of enslaved by the school schedule as far as when they travel. And I think going off-season in Prague would probably be November, late October, November. Late January, February, early March is probably a good time as well. And it's fine. It can be a little cool there, but I like that. So, this is Bern here in Tbilisi, Georgia, another place you should go. And I'm going to do one of these for Georgia soon. You want me to do that? I will. Well, as we say here, nachlandis and droebit, which means temporarily. We will meet each other again soon.
Vám skalím hlavy! Bude konec!